All right, well, the third segment today, Chloe thought we could just talk about a little bit about why this is happening.
Yeah.
I imagine most of our audience know. So perhaps if you can forward this to anyone, any ostriches you know that have had their head in the sand for the last, well, arguably 10, 15 years, or more like 50 years.
Any Lib Dem voters you know.
Yeah. Any Radio 4 listening, Channel 4 News watching, Guardian reading, boomers. So, well, two-tier Kier, I mean, this is sort of the last symptom of it all, isn't it? Is that we end up with someone like Keir Starlin, two-tier Kier, is sort of the end result of a long, many years worth of decline, for want of a better word.
And what I find interesting about Starmer is he's essentially formally implementing the informal arrangement of the UK state up until this point. Yes, those communities are going to get special privilege against you, but it was never explicit. You know, it was always just an implicit. Well, we're not going to look into the grooming gangs. It's going to take decades for these victims to get justice. And then when they do, well, the gang members will be out in the streets in 5 years, and they'll bump into their victims at Asda and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just unacceptable stuff like this. They're not
certainly won't deport them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's totally normal that they're allowed to continue to remain here and stuff like this. Like this. And like we saw with the Islamic financing, the Muslims don't have to pay interest on their loans and stuff, on the mortgages and stamp duty. You know, it's just informal. But Keir Starmer is making this now reified. He's concretizing this.
Well, it's fundamentally a problem which, to paraphrase Tony Blair, is immigration, isn't it?
It's true.
He's not talking about it. He's cracking down on the people talking about it. Yeah. People aren't going to, take it sitting down because it's the safety of their families that is, on the chopping block. And that's why this police tyranny is so concerning.
So I won't play this clip because you already played it in the last segment. But instead, I have thought I saw another very good clip, a side-by-side clip on Twitter before it came on. I haven't got the link here. But what it was Christopher Hitchens talking in 2009, side-by-side by a clip of Starmer talking to
Sadiq Khan.
How
he's going to end Islamophobia.
The London Mayor Sadiq Khan, not the 7/7 terrorist Sadiq Khan. Just to be clear.
The London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who previously had defended the 9/11 attackers.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I mean, that literally...
7/7 ones or 9/11
was it 7/7 was it?
Or both. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't know.
Previously was a defence lawyer for jihadis.
All right. And in that, Christopher Hitchens in 2009 said, it's a great clip. I know probably a lot of our audience are sort of Christian and religious. They might not like Chris Hitchens, who hates being called Chris, incidentally. Professor Christopher Hitchens saying in 2009, criticise Islam while you can, because soon enough you will not be able to. They'll make Islamophobia a codified thing in law, and you will not be able to criticise it. And then there's a clip of Kier in 2024 talking to Sadiq Khan saying, we've got to make sure that any Islamophobia is cracked down upon and tightened up and all that sort of thing. So Christopher Hitchens calling it exactly, perfectly. Okay, so the next link, Samson, can you do that for us? Or whoever's got a mouse? So I was going to talk a bit about that Ian Dunt tweet, because I retweeted it. I couldn't believe it. There was someone else, I can't remember who, somebody saying about the legitimate concerns of the English side of the writers, and he's just said there are no legitimate concerns. I retweeted this image just saying, really? No legitimate concerns. And this, of course, is the tip of the iceberg. The absolute tip of the iceberg, because we haven't got all the pictures of
these terrorists,
the thousands and thousands and thousands of rape victims, for example. Just the list goes on and on and on of all the different. I'm not even going to read out the list of all the different various attacks. All the sort of an almost endless list of murders and sex crimes. But according to Mr. Dunt, there's no legitimate concern.
It's more than that as well, because there are so many videos of just English lads being attacked by gangs of Muslims and driven out of areas. Like there was a BBC thing I watched a while ago about this old couple who were just getting bricks through their window from the Asian community, just trying to drive them out of the area. Like this kind of hostility. When I was doing my MEP campaign, I spoke to a woman in, I think it was Taunton, who was from Hull, and I was just like, what are your concerns? And she says, well, look, I used to live in Hull, but I was basically driven out because they're just racist towards us. They just hate us. So we had to leave. And it's this low-level background hatred that comes from one community towards another that has just been a part of their normal lives.
It's kafir, isn't it? It's beyond even just mere racism.
No, it's an active hostility. One community to another.
That's just one layer is the race.
Yeah.
It's also religious and cultural and all sorts of things. It's just you are the other. You're a kafir. You're a non-believer. You're a non-Muslim.
And the state backs us, right? So the state, that the state backs them. Keir Starmer has come out and explicitly said, I'm the protector of the Muslim community. But that's been an informal thing for a long time. Like with the grooming gangs. When Sarah Champion came out in like 2015 and said, look, I think 1 million English girls might have been raped by these gangs, she was castigated by the Labour. How dare you say that? They covered up. There were police and councillors who were involved in covering up the grooming gang scandal. When Alexis J put out her report, they were incensed. How dare you say this is actually happening? Like there's been a desperate cover up for this for decades.
I think it's epitomised by Naz Shah sharing that fake Owen Jones parody account tweet of you need to shut up for the sake of diversity, which she promptly deleted and said she did accidentally. She both liked and retweeted it.
Just accidentally slipped twice.
Really fat fingers. Yeah.
On this message,
all these victims here have essentially been sacrificed at the altar of multiculturalism.
Yes. And there are more to come.
Well, if the true collage of the English people or the British people who have been sacrificed at that altar, you wouldn't even be able to see their faces because it would be so zoomed out. There'd be so many, you'd hardly be able to even notice them. And that's sort of epitomizing what statistics coming out about this sort of thing are saying, right? It's so widespread now that it's almost impossible to put a face to it, which is a real travesty.
Well, that was the thing we're talking about. If this segment is supposed to be about why is this happening? Well, you can only push people so far. Even extremely docile, relatively affluent, very, very civilized civilizations like the English or the British. It's also happening in Ireland and all over the place.
Well, it's happening in
Northern Ireland.
But it's not happening in Wales or Scotland.
To a lesser extent. Also in the Republic of Ireland. Oh, right, yeah. There is lots of stuff in the Republic of Ireland as well. We've did a segment before about it. Anyway, people can only be pushed so far. And usually the line in the sand for people is if they're starving to death. There's an old adage saying that every city or every population is 3 meals away from revolution or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. That's not the exact wording. But yeah,
basically.
Or if they fear for their very lives in the immediate, or if they fear for the safety of their children. Yeah. And we're there. We're not starving. Mr. Biden's Bidenomics, Janet the felon Yellen, hasn't quite starved us into submission yet.
Although this is part of our lives.
But they fear cheese is very expensive, isn't it? Now?
Everything's
I shouldn't make a joke. But people are scared for their children.
I'm scared.
It's as simple as that. You could take your kid to a Taylor Swift dance class. And she's going to be butchered.
Or a Miley Cyrus concert.
Right.
And the reason, we saw him, but we didn't want him to intervene because of racism. So, unbelievable.
And if they refuse to accept that there are any concerns, well, it's not going away then, I wouldn't have thought. And even if you do put that lid back on the pressure cooker, the pressure's still there.
And also it's going to intensify because you're attacking the people who have a legitimate grievance.
The more you put pressure into that pressure cooker, you can keep putting more and more weight on the lid so it doesn't blow off. Okay. Pressure's not gone anywhere, has it?
Yeah. Can you contain it forever?
And so, just historically speaking, sometimes you look back at history and you think, for example, why was it in sort of maybe, let's say, medieval 14th century England or something, how was it that the average person was ready to rise up and give their life almost at a moment's notice in some sort of street protest? I'm thinking of the Peasants' Revolt, for example. It's because they were largely starving and the state would do nothing for them or gaslight them into...
Or as part of the problem.
Yeah. Or your kids you're fearful for the future of your kids. Yeah. Well, because why was it that the mob of Alexandria, for a lot of its history, was ready to rise up and burn their own city down at the drop of a hat all the time? Because they were living in absolute fear.
Yeah.
And so if you force people down that route, it becomes inevitable.
Especially as this is a matter of policy. Nothing about this is necessary.
was
not inevitable.
all avoidable. There are politicians that are responsible for the situation on the streets at the minute.
100%. This was all a choice to do this to us. That's the thing.
Steve Laws tweeted, you could just close the borders and deport a few million people and all of this goes away.
Yeah.
But they were not going to do that.
There's literally...
They will not do that.
There's going to be somewhere between 2 and 5 million illegal immigrants in this country.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to say, oh, people who came in legally, fair enough, we allowed you legally. Just stop people coming in and deport illegals. And almost all of this dissipates, you know? So,
at least there'll be a release valve on that.
Exactly.
At least that. Yeah. Okay. So there's the next link of if you want to play this actually because it's such a perfect example of what's going on here, the pressure cooker thing.
Yeah.
Taking their responsibility away because it's my colleagues and my family members who are in the front line dealing with this. They're taking the brickbats. What I'm saying is you have to be very careful now with tempers the way they are and people's sense of angst of what had gone on in the preceding couple of days where you'd had an army officer stabbed in the back, the misleading representation in the northwest where this occurred.
That's a different case there, Kevin, so we'll leave it there. That's Kevin Hurley.
No, they're not. You're missing the point. All of you are missing the point. People conflate this and they make two and two, and they make five.
We're worsening that conflation by mentioning the two cases together here. So we'll leave it there. Thank you. Kevin Hurley, who's the former Detective Chief Superintendent.
Just pipe down, Gammon. Pipe down, will you?
But he's actually exactly on the money because, of course
he is.
The army officer who got stabbed was by an immigrant. Like, This is, again, just another example of how these people are making people feel unsafe in their own country because of the violence that they're doing. Like, you know, I don't support people rioting or anything like that, but this is the source of it. And he's trying to let her know. And she says, no, that's a separate incident, as if things happen in isolation.
I'm sure she's got it in her ear. It's like, no, he's noticing, he's hitting the nail on the head. Shut him down, shut it down.
Well, it's only going to make people more angry because when these global nomads that present at the BBC shut down native British people and say, oh, your concerns about immigration, no, it's irrelevant. You know, it's not even related. That's unrelated. You're making things worse. That's only going to make people feel like there are no legitimate means of solving this politically.
People don't riot if they feel they have a way of speaking the truth to the people who are in the positions of power who should be listening.
Absolutely.
There's no reason to riot. People riot when they feel, like as Martin Luther King told us, it's the language of the unheard. Sorry, you know,
Yeah, you can't dispute Dr. King, can
exactly.
you?
Yeah. I just hope the Muslim mobs recognise what Dr. King told us. I hope they don't give in to the politics of hate.
Well, it's a bit too late for that, isn't it?
Yeah, they should not look back in anger, really. So yeah, there was this statement from Donna Jones, who's chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. So a very senior person.
And she's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight.
Right, okay.
So she's not a nobody.
Right.
She was a Conservative installation, I believe. And
amongst a little bit of pearl clutching and hand wringing, she did sort of mention the actual thing.
Yeah.
Right? She did eventually sort of say that, you know, it's immigration.
Yeah. Well, she says, whilst the devastating attacks in Southport on Tuesday were a catalyst, the commonality amongst the protest groups appears to be focused on three key areas: the desire to protect Britain's sovereignty, they need to uphold British values, and in order to do this, stop illegal immigration. Well, it's not just illegal immigration. But the government must acknowledge what is causing the civil unrest in order to prevent it. Arresting people or creating violent disorder units is treating the symptom and not the cause. The questions these people want answering: what is the government's solution to mass uncontrolled immigration? How are the new Labour government going to uphold and build on British values? This is the biggest challenge facing Keir Starmer, and it's bitten quickly. Yeah, we're 3 weeks in. We're in the 4th week now of Keir Starmer, and there's mass riots across the UK.
Starmer's values, if you can even use that word, are to favour Davos over Westminster.
Yeah,
he said so explicitly, didn't he, in that interview?
And to favour the Muslim community over the native.
It is also worth mentioning this choice of phrase here, that they're reframing it as illegal migration. And Douglas Murray recently did this, and it was infuriating.
Yeah. It's legal migration.
No, it's not just illegal migration. That's just, the tip of the iceberg. It's also the legal migration that's been allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Was it net 700,000 people? It's a major city every year.
Yeah. Well, the inflow is 1.2 to 1.4 a year million. And the outflow
ridiculous.
is 600 to 800,000. So it evens out about 700,000 in, which is just mad. But yeah, she was forced to delete this, wasn't she?
Right, so that's another thing about this. She was forced to sort of delete it, retract it, just again shut it down, be quiet, stop it.
So even though it was milquetoast, it was removed.
Yeah. It's an incredibly tepid response.
There's another link there, which if anyone can see it.
You took a knee for BLM, you wore rainbow for pride, but you dressed for war with concerned parents. Shame on you. Protest sign. It's totally fair.
Mm.
Okay, it boils down to this thing. If people are starving and they've got no recourse, they will get violent. If people fear for their kids and they're told to just be quiet and stop noticing it, and how dare you say or do anything, it's not. You can't do that. It won't work. It's human nature. It doesn't. We haven't been deracinated that much, right?
Well, I mean, I don't think so, but
well, no, because it's human nature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally normal to want safety for your children. It's demented to not care about it.
You can't take your kids to a dance class or an Ariana Grande concert or something.
When the controlled, what was the name of the unit they've got? The controlled response to terrorism.
Oh, Cobra.
No.
That's the committee.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
they've got a
Prevent?
sort of no. It's like a nudge unit.
I know what you mean.
Oh, yeah.
I know what you mean.
You know, whatever it is, but they trot out the parents of the victims and say, "Don't look back in anger. Don't blame the Muslim community for killing my children." And it's just disgraceful. It's a horrible thing to watch these people being forced to essentially say the life of my child didn't matter actually more than anti-racism matters.
Well, it's also an appalling thing to then manipulate a grieving parent to your will when they're probably most susceptible to suggestion because their mind's obviously elsewhere, right? You've got to be a particularly abominable person to do that to
it's
someone.
disgusting.
I'd say feel free to look back in anger. That's all commies do, is look back in anger.
Yeah.
That's what Islam is largely about, looking back in anger, looking back to an 8th century battle and flagellating yourself in sorrow and anger about it.
Yeah.
But we can't look back in anger?
Who cares?
No, we can. You can look back in anger. Feel
Who cares
free.
about the politics of 8th century Arabia? I don't care what Muhammad's grandson Ali did or did not get when he was like the Sunni Shia divide is just purely a political divide from the 8th century. There's nothing theological about it. It's crazy. It's like, sorry, the prophet's grandson didn't get the inheritance he deserved.
Your brother or
Okay.
son or something is sunning himself on a beach in Tunisia and is mowed down for being white. Don't look back in anger about that. Don't look back in anger, though.
Yeah.
Anyway, last link I thought, what's this link? I didn't put this one in.
This is just callers on LBC because we're getting like, the genuine attitude of the English here, as you can see from Mike here. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, the parents of the murderer shouldn't have been in the country in the first place. Yeah, because they're Hutus from Rwanda. Like, sorry, like, if you know anything about the Rwandan genocide, you realize the entire Hutu community was complicit in this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that was genuinely horrible. And we're just cavalier, just taking... It doesn't matter. They're just people from Rwanda. They're just people. There's nothing about them that could be different to anyone else, anywhere else. It's like, God, this was a mistake.
Well, I actually recently watched the film Hotel Rwanda, rather topically. And I've also studied at a university, and the entire country erupted almost in a spontaneous genocide.
Oh, it wasn't spontaneous.
Well,
It was
there was
organized.
political agitation, but people just, without much provocation, chose to participate.
Oh, no, I recently read a book on it. What they would do, the lawyers, the judges, the politicians would round up all of the Hutu men in the villages and force them to go and just murder them, right? And then they'd spend all day in the swamps killing Tutsis. And so everyone was complicit. That was the thing. It was to make sure that no one could point the finger and say, oh, I didn't do it. You're the ones responsible. No, they were all in, and they knew it. And so there were some governors in some of the provinces of Rwanda who didn't want to engage. And so they were removed and replaced with pro-genocide governors who would then, again, round up the entire male population, whether they wanted to or not. And a lot of them didn't want to. And they just made them go out and do it to make them complicit. And so the fact that we're like, okay, we'll just take people from Rwanda. It's like, well, are they Hutu or Tutsi? Like, we can take Tutsis, obviously.
Almost the whole generation, that generation of Rwandan men, traumatized,
Well, the
brutalized.
generation of the attackers that was his father.
Yeah.
Which supposedly also beat his son as well,
I mean,
brutally.
May well have done.
Reportedly.
But it happened in 1994. So anyone of a certain age...
You can't even really imagine their sort of household discussions. What made the mind of that 17-year-old? No. Can you imagine the insanity?
I have no idea.
Brutality.
I have no idea
what would. Yeah. So Boris Johnson straightened his hair.
No, that's his sister.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. But anyway.
So what was she saying there?
She's like not saying a lot actually. But because what are you going to say to there's a large number of foreign-born people in social housing who shouldn't be here. Duh. Like that's obviously true. Why are 72% of Somalians in this UK being paid to live here by the UK taxpayer? Send them home.
Yeah, why are they here at all?
Okay. And lastly, I thought I'd play this short clip of Enoch Pal, who, although has been massively demonised by the left in the last few years, was actually a very popular politician in his day.
Oh yeah, like
very,
80%
very popular
approval rating.
Yeah.
No one now can get anywhere near.
Could have possibly have been a leader and things. And he was calling, I don't know exactly when this clip's from, but I assume it's from the 70s. So knocking 50 years ago sort of calls it perfectly. The prescience of it is quite remarkable.
Yeah, Britain's very own Cassandra.
You see this wherever there is a divided community with a majority and a minority, for everyone immediately says, oh, well, this must be because the minority is being unjustly treated. In fact, in this country, the immigrant minority is not only not being unjustly treated, but they are being treated with a lavish concern, which no minority would enjoy in any other country in the world, so much so, as Mr. Hawley said in his report, they can't think what's wrong with our heads, the way we carry on. But then people say, there wouldn't have been this violence if we weren't doing something wrong, so they immediately try to find out what it is that they were doing wrong to make up for it. The result of that is simply to put more power, more leverage in the hands of those who are operating the violence. And so it goes on until there is very natural, the technical term is a backlash. You have a backlash, and of course it would be called a white backlash. And so on one side and the other, you have what eventually erupts into a form of civil war. And if we were asked to create the conditions for civil war, we couldn't do better than what we have been achieving and are continuing to accumulate in some of the major cities and industrial areas of this country.
Quite remarkable to have said that something like 50 years ago.
Obviously correct. People can demonise Enoch Pal as much as they want, but he presaged all of this.
It's describing our society almost exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I said something and 50 years later it was proven to be exactly right, I would be, well, not smug because there's nothing good about it.
No.
But I mean, just again, the prescience of it is remarkable.
Well, to be able to predict the future in that way, you've got to be able to identify the principles in a pretty crystal clear way as to how society functions, really, and how human beings operate and human nature. And for him to have got it so on the money seems to suggest that everything he was saying there was spot on, which I definitely believe.
A very, very deep understanding of both history and the human condition.
Yes.
Both of those things.
And he was a historian. So.
Yeah, he's one of the youngest professors, wasn't he?
Was he?
Yeah, extremely knowledgeable in history, because history often teaches us the pitfalls we're about to fall into.
And I just want to point out that Powell himself, I don't think, was a racist. He wasn't like someone who hated minorities or anything like that. And like he was just saying, look, from my experience reading about all of this stuff, there's predictable patterns, principles, as you said, that from which you can derive logical and inevitable conclusions. I mean, the point about creating the conditions, the Conservatives and the Labour Party have created the conditions for ethnic strife across the country, and we're seeing it. It's like great.
Sectarianism, yeah.
100%.
Right.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're getting up to, you can follow our series Lads Hour on the website, where we normally have a lot of fun, but sometimes we talk about serious topics as well. And if you want to see all the other work we're putting out, you can follow us on Twitter and you won't miss a thing. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.